I'd be curious this morning, especially as we talk about groups, have you ever experienced relational conflict? I wondered if I was going to be able to say that with a straight face or not. Have you ever experienced relational conflict in the last hour? Like, let's get specific. Like really, like if you think about your life, you think about this past week, if you think about these past months, have you ever experienced relational conflict? Did anybody conflict with another on the way here this morning? That's an age-old practice. Anyone who's in a relationship on the way to church oftentimes engages in. But if you think about your life right now, where's the relational conflict? Who's it with? How bad is it? Where are you feeling it the most? Is it a new one? Is it a repeated one? How are you doing with relational conflict? And in that, I want us to be thinking about triangles this morning. Not the Bermuda Triangle, which I don't know about you, but like when I was younger, I used to have this like great fear of the Bermuda Triangle. Like I could remember like nightmares and like not being able to sleep sometimes at night from this thing on the other side of the United States that like one time told me like if the planes fly over it, they just seem to disappear. Like I don't know what that was from, but it's not that. It's not the triangle that your work goes to die in between like Facebook and Twitter and your email. Anybody like the productivity you try to do throughout the day and it's just like finds itself there? That all your productivity dies there, okay? But I actually want to talk about relational triangles. Now, in a very short, quick way of trying to do this, you find yourself in relational triangles whether you're aware of it or not. Right now, there's triangles relationally in this room. And every time you add another person, the triangles actually like multiply. And so what you do is you find yourself navigating relationships with 1 to 2 other people. When you think it's just one-on-one, the reality is that there's always another player. It's another person, it's your work, it's something else that you're trying to manage. No matter what, it's not just one-on-one. And so by way of trying to communicate triangles, why don't we just watch this clip from Parenthood real quick.
Ow! I mean to go right there and get it! Hi.
Hey. Thought I'd bring him back.
Come in if you want.
Zeke here?
No, he's babysitting for Julia. You're safe.
What are you doing to the chicken?
I have to go to work in a little, and so I thought I'd make you guys dinner, because Mom and Dad aren't here.
It doesn't look the same.
Well, I mean, whatever. It's chicken. I have to chop it one more time. Watch this. See, it's almost done.
Yeah.
Your mom is an excellent cook.
You're right. They call her Sarah Boyardee, right?
You know what? I have a very, very big knife. I'm trying something to learn something new.
You mind if I give you a hand there?
Oh, speaking of excellent cooks.
I know my way around a chicken. Son, come watch and learn.
Since when?
I developed an interest in a few things, like cooking.
Really? Look at you developing interests in things.
I have other interests too.
Do you guys want to?
Hey!
I'm making dinner, which, you know, we could really use your help. Dad knows how to cut the chicken, actually, but, come
I don't
help.
want to see this.
Come join us just for a minute.
No, that's cool. You just keep poking that chicken, whatever you're doing.
Hey, Amber, Dad's taking me to Alcatraz on Friday. I feel like you should come.
Oh, yeah.
I know
can't,
about...
'cause-
Yeah, come on, sweetheart. I know how much you love Alcatraz.
No, you know what? You're right. Maybe I will come, because I love it.
How's the guitar working out?
Oh, the guitar. Yes, I meant to tell you. The only thing is that it doesn't sound good, and I don't want it. So if you want it, you should take it back, or I'm going to sell it.
Amber.
Okay.
You don't have to be rude.
Oh,
You
and
don't
the
need
other
to do
thing
that.
is, I actually can't go to Alcatraz because I get sick on boats, which, you know, is something that everybody that knows me knows. But, you know, I just forget that it's basically like we're strangers. So.
Sweetheart, I'm just trying to...
Stop calling me that. I don't even know you. You don't know anything about me.
Amber.
You can't just waltz in here after all this time and act like everything is fine and just like buy us a burger and like give me a crappy guitar and everything's just gonna be fine again, you know, and I guess it works. I guess it works on everybody but me. I guess I'm the only person that, you know, has a problem with it, but I'm sorry, but I can't forget the fact that you didn't come to my birthdays when you promised that you would, and you didn't take me out all the times that you promised that you would, and you were not there for me when I really needed you. And so I have trouble believing that you've changed because I've heard it all before, and I'm sorry, but I look at you and I just see the same loser who let me down.
I'm sorry, Dad. She just gets that way. She goes off on us all the time, too. So.
I shouldn't be here right now.
You don't have to go.
Buddy, I'll call you about Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Okay.
God. Look, Mom, why don't you just sit here and let her yell at him? Or you didn't protect him whatsoever. I mean, she won't even give him a chance. He's trying.
Got real. You could like just watch Parenthood, and every episode's like a therapy session in so many ways, because it makes you like think about your own life. It makes you think about the lives of others. It makes you think about just the layers to things. And what we saw happen in here was like 9 different triangles playing out. I mean, you could see it just in the eye glares happening in the room. And what you tend to have is when triangles, we're all in them, and they, not necessarily good or bad, we'll get to a quote here in a second that it helps explain that. But when the anxiety actually starts to rise, when the stress actually starts to rise, we all tend to respond to these triangles differently. If you look at the father who has been absent from their lives, he tends to respond by just walking out. The mom tends to just stand there. The son tries to just play it off like everything's fine and it's going to be okay. The daughter enters into conflict and just has to get it all out and just to say it all and then just to leave them with it. Do you notice in your own life when you're in any of these triangles, are there any that are just conflicting relationships? And are you aware of the ways that you tend to respond? Because I don't know about you, I have a lot of other people in my life that cause conflict. I don't cause the conflict, okay? Let's be clear. But they're conflicting relationships because we're in relationships together. Inside this church, there's conflicting relationships, and for God's sake, there will continue to be forever. And that we actually have a chance to press into the triangles that we find ourselves in for a greater story to be played out than oftentimes the one that we just saw. And some are going to be more extreme and some are going to be less. But are you aware of how you respond? Because what we're doing is talking about in this series is relate. Like, how do we relate to one another? How does the church actually relate? How do we relate to other people? And the belief is that if we can have healthy relationships here in the church, we can actually be a healthy church. And I don't know about you, if people are less and less likely to desire church in their life, they're definitely less and less likely to desire a church that's unhealthy in their life. And what tends to happen is God has turned the script from a lot of years saying, hey, your relationship is based on this vertical thing with me. And as Jesus enters the story, it gets flipped horizontal and says, your relationship with me is actually now based on the relationship that you have with other people. How you relate to one another, how you relate to the person sitting next to you, how do you relate to the person sitting 5 rows back from you? How do you relate to your community group? How you relate on serve teams? How do you relate in the community with others? That is actually in the way, if we can find unity as relationships, God actually says that is how people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And for us to love well oftentimes means that we need to be willing to press into the relationships that are hard. Now, you can't fix all the relationships that you find yourself in. You can't take responsibility for others. Listen back to last week, the first action is actually to take responsibility for ourselves, our own emotions. And then we can enter in healthily. Now, I want to just one quick quote around this. to help us understand a little bit. But triangles are one of the most common ways a relationship system manages anxiety. They're not good or bad, but they can keep us from dealing directly with challenges in one-on-one relationships. The higher the level of anxiety in a family or organization, the more quickly triangles will activate. See, triangles can actually keep us from something. Because what tends to happen is, like we just saw in the show, everyone goes their own way. Some people enter in with conflict, some people cut off, some people distance themselves. Whatever it is, there's actually no repair work done in that scene. There's no willingness to actually work through the triangle, to name the things, to name the emotions, to actually use facts and say, hey, when that happened, it made me feel this way. But then we got to do a work of like, well, why did it make me feel that way? Hey, when that happened, I felt like this, so then I actually did this. And that's what it takes to work in these triangles. And now the benefit that we have is we see that this matters in the scriptures. And I think a big part of why it matters, especially within the church, is because if we cannot recognize the triangles we're in, we turn to that spiritual gift of gossip most often. We stay in control of the challenging relationship we find ourselves in by going to someone else and saying, man, oh, I can't believe so-and-so. Like, Jake, Andrew, man, we gotta pray for him. Like, he's got some things going on in his life. I don't know. And he and I are having a conversation, and like, dude, we gotta figure this out with him. And we tend to like, don't worry, Andrew and I are good. He didn't do anything. But we tend to like almost over-spiritualize this thing, and we keep ourselves in power by not me actually going to Andrew and saying, hey man, can we talk about something? But I need to pull someone else in. That's the triangling, because my own anxiety can't handle it. I need to bring someone else in. I can't do it. I need to, but the scriptures say this in Matthew 18. If your brother or sister sins, now sins here, I know we tend to think about like the moral thing they did. They messed up, they fell short, they did something bad. But really what we're talking about here is relationships. So if your brother or sister did anything to harm the relationship that you find yourself in, cause relational separation, cause something to come between your relationship, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. In the relational conflict you find yourself in, have you gone to them yet, just between the two of you? If not, who else have you already gone to? Who have you already brought in? Who did you try to release the anxiety to? Who did you try to pull in to the own mess that you find yourself in? I don't know about you, but that's usually my first response. If I can just vent out loud to somebody, that's really going to solve the thing I have with someone else. No, it solves the anxiety I feel and maybe the shame or the guilt. But you go to the person just between the two of you. And he continues. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen. So the if plays in, and now there's a cause or response. So if they listen, well, you did it. You actually did the thing. Them listening, not hearing what you said, but listening, means that you two are working on something. Can you always control the way someone listens, the thing that you have to share? Absolutely not. But what you can control so far is to actually go to the person one-on-one. If they listen, fantastic. You guys work something out. They've now been invited into the process of whatever's happening. Then he continues. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along. Now, this is a tricky part because we can do the thing where it's like you find the right couple people like on your side beforehand, right? It's like, hey, so-and-so in my life, and you know how they are. You know what's going on with them. Like, hey, can you help me? Can we go talk to them? AKA, can you help me tell them why they're wrong and where they need to change? It's not that we go find the people to come in with like pitchforks and lanterns with us and we charge the other person we're in conflict with. But we actually invite someone else in to enter into the pressure, also to alleviate it to where they can enter into a healthy triangle with us and to say, hey, here's the story. And that person, which oftentimes can be us because we can get pulled into triangles also, can be a person that says, hey, what if we actually started by saying, I only want to process this with you if you're going to actually be willing to go and like reconcile your relationship with the person that we're talking about. Could you imagine if you were that person? Versus they're like, oh, tell me more. I know how they are. You know what I mean? We tend to do that, but what if we were the ones that just said, hey, hey, it sounds like something really hard is going on in your relationship. As we process, can we commit to, one, talking as if the person was in the room? And then two, I need you in the next 48 hours at your best ability to actually go and have that conversation with them. If not, then you need to keep the conversation. I'm actually not gonna enter into this anxious Bermuda Triangle that you've brought me into, right? Do you imagine if even we could be that people when we're trying to get pulled into the triangles? And here, this every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 others actually comes from Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, and it's that you need a few people to actually verify its proof. So you tell a story in your head about the other person, they're telling a story in their head about you, and you actually need other people to help verify the story that's going on. So again, a healthy triangle. Next one, we're almost done here. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church, and if they refuse to listen even at the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Now, here's the hard part, is that he's talking to disciples. He's talking about to the church. And he's now saying, hey, if this isn't happening, if you've invited someone in and it's still not working, you actually need to bring a larger group of people in, which means that the church is a place that is willing to enter into relationships with one another and to reconcile relationships. Everybody at large. And that when we invite the larger group in, we can actually then work forward. Now here's the caution, is that and if yet that person still is not going to respond to the ways in which they are damaging, separating, harming relationships, we actually need to kick them out and treat them like a pagan or a tax collector. Sounds harsh, right? Okay, 2 things. One, I think it's harsh because God is saying this is so worth protecting. The way in which you navigate the triangles of relationships you find yourself in matters so much. Not only to you, not only to your relationship with me, but also to the watching world. They're actually looking and saying, well, there's a bunch of gossips and hypocrites. They have all these crazy relationships. They don't respect each other. What is attractive about that? Nothing. It looks just like everything else. So I think there's something to protect. I had a New Testament professor also say one time, so now it's really harsh. There's something to protect here. And it's crazy to think like we're just going to exile somebody. But then he said, how would Jesus or the others actually treat a pagan or a tax collector? He would give them grace. What are we called to do with all people? To invite them to life with Jesus. To actually invite people into a place of grace and mercy and forgiveness and love. To actually pursue other people by the Spirit of God. So it's not, hey, get out of here, we're done with you. It's saying, hey, you're not willing to do the things that we're up to here as a community, as the people of God. But what we don't want to do is lose connection, because here's the ways in which we're continuing to invite you back in. Here's what this looks like. This is called being a centered, set church, that we hold Jesus at the center, and we can't control who's in or who's out, but we can all continue to find ways in the life of Jesus in which we're moving towards Jesus. And so we love them. We invite them in. We extend grace. We humble ourselves first and foremost. And so God is saying, still even in that, that's another triangle. Now you have me and that person in the whole church. How are we navigating that triangle? But it's easier just to cut off and to push out. And it's easier for others to run because it takes this work. Can we be the people that are willing to invite people in even when they are causing relational harm and damage and unable to listen? Last couple here. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. There are spiritual and eternal implications to this. This physical reality of relationships that we find ourselves in have a spiritual component to them and a spiritual implication. The gravity of our relationships is high. It's weighty. That God is actually saying what you're doing right now with your relationships matters in my kingdom, now and later. And they work back and forth with one another, and he drives it home with this. Again, truly I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. And I know we've always used this one in prayer. Father, 2 of us are gathered, and we know that you're here with us, so amen. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, God is with us. He's present. But he's saying right now he's with the people that are willing to do the reconciliation in their relationships, and that his power and his presence is the one that's actually going to reconcile those relationships. That's where he is in groups of people, both small and big, doing this thing of pressing into reconciliation, pressing into love, pressing into humility, pressing into the hard work of what it takes to tell a larger narrative of God that is redeeming all things through his Son that then works out through a group of people like us. Again, sometimes I question why he chose it to be that way, because it does not make sense. Because we do this stuff. We triangle, we gossip. We want to blame shift and push out and not actually do the work of pressing in. And the last little thing here, and here's just the thing that I offer you this morning. I think it's the last slide. Yeah. And I put our willingness, because you can't control the other side. But I think our willingness to reconcile relational conflict is both a petition, an ask of God, and it's also at the same time a demonstration of the presence and the power of Jesus and his kingdom in our life. If we aren't able to enter into the relational triangles that we find ourselves in, if we aren't able to resist gossip in our lives, keeping people at a distance, still remaining in power and relieving our anxiety with someone else, if we aren't able to do that, I do wonder if Jesus and his kingdom have taken hold of our life. And I wonder it for myself. Because there's still times where it's just easier to both relieve the anxiety and enter into someone else's anxiety with them. But it takes hard work to say, hey, I hear something big's going on and it matters. I want to be able to help however I can. But let's act as if the person is in the room right now that we're going to talk about, and it's with the agreement that you're actually going to go to them next. And if you need my help, I'll go. And or can we be the people that says, man, I'm in this hard relationship right now. Just to pick on Andrew again. Hey, Andrew, can we talk, man? You know how much I value our relationship. And I just have noticed in my own life, in myself lately, I've been feeling this way, and I've thought this, and I noticed when you did this, and can we talk? What if you did that with all of your relationships that you find conflict in? Yes, it's absolutely terrifying if that was your first thought. And yes, it takes a work that is highly uncomfortable. But what if you did that right now? What if you left this week with the relationship that you find the most conflict in and just said, hey, can I take you to lunch? Can we go grab a coffee? Now again, there's boundaries around the people that you're doing this with. You have no control over them. Other people have to be willing to enter in. I mean, I'll give you all the caveats of why this doesn't work at the same time. But may those caveats not be excuses for you to do the work that Jesus and his kingdom are inviting us to. May we be the people that take the ownership and say, I'm going to lead from the center. I'm going to lead from the bottom. I'm going to enter in, and I'm not going to let the other excuses keep me from doing the things that Jesus is up to. Why don't we stand together?